Thanks very much. I'm going to share my screen because I've got a presentation, which kind of makes sense for this sort of visual aspect. Let me just get it up here. Slideshow. Okay, I've got 10 minutes. So yeah, hello everyone. Thank you for being here today at this conference. It's so thoughtfully organised by Ruby and Lee. It was an honour to be asked to speak and to know that my colleagues from the field are here to talk, amongst other great speakers, in our discussion on play, work and children in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I'm the creative director and co-founder of Kitabna, which means Our Book in Arabic, the organisation with which I write and illustrate children's books with communities affected by war, with my colleagues, who I'm very glad to see here today, Maria, Asia and Federica. So last year, I held story writing workshops with children and teachers displaced by ISIS in northeast Syria, workshops in which people reimagine their lives. So imagination, or this word khiyal in Arabic, was the tool we used to sort of think out of the immediate and isolated IDP camp context, that's internally displaced persons, to represent it as a place of possibility. So I subsequently worked in Northern Ireland with Syrian families resettled under the UK government's Vulnerable Persons Resettlement Scheme on an Arabic-English children's book series combining Syrian and Irish storytelling traditions as a tool for teachers welcoming newcomer students. So the past 7 years of my work have led me to understand how stories can package important information and connect with those who are vulnerable or feel unsafe, which makes a lot of sense for the theme of the conference today. When I say package, as per the title of this talk, I mean it in a sense of enclosing and gifting. So right now I'm assisting the Heart to Art Foundation in Guyana to develop a children's book which helps children name their body parts following sexual abuse. So in a context where naming sexual body parts remains taboo in the Caribbean. I'm also working with the Norwegian Refugee Council's Syria Response Office on legal rights awareness education materials, which illustrate the family trees and oral histories of women's intergenerational struggles to access their housing, land and property rights. My colleague Camilla Lodi from the Norwegian Refugee Council in Amman is here today to talk about the Better Learning Programme, which I have illustrated and shares basic coping techniques for children experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder in post-conflict societies. It was following this that I began to work as a creative consultant on e-mental health interventions with the World Health Organization, first in Lebanon with an app called Step by Step, which packaged a 6-week program for emotional distress as a mobile phone app for people without access to formal healthcare. So this led to subsequent projects in Tanzania and South Africa with children and teenagers. So I've returned to academia to complete my master's at SOAS University of London. I'm very happy to see some of my friends here today. Where I plan to conduct doctoral research into the role of storytelling as a restorative act in post-conflict societies under the supervision of Dr. Althea Maria Rivas. And my thesis is that the act of transmission, or speaking one's truth, or sharing one's experience is valuable in itself, regardless of any judicial outcome. So it deserves as much attention as the law-centric processes of international criminal justice, such as amnesties for war criminal or truth and reconciliation commissions. However, my academic interests took a backseat when the Mental Health and Psychosocial Support regional group of the Interagency Standing Committee of the United Nations in Emergency gathered to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic with our children's book, My Hero Is You. And this is what I'm here to talk about. But before I begin, I would like to share a poem that means the world to me, and it shapes the way I think and act in my work. This poem is Wild Geese by Mary Oliver. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things. So it's this line, sorry, that's the poem. It's this line, the world offers itself to your imagination, which feels to me the most charged with possibility in this poem. That's my cat, sorry. And it's called to me since I started writing stories many years ago. So I'd like to tell you the story of My Hero Is You, which started with an exchange of emails, and it sounds quite similar to the process we just heard from Noisy Crow. Yeah, basically an exchange of emails between my colleague, Dr. Fahmi Hanna, who is writing to authors all over the world from a compound in Yemen, asking who could help the WHO tell a story that could package some basic mental health awareness education based on the real fears of parents and caregivers and children around the world. So I'm going to present this in 3 sections. Firstly, the needs assessment and process of creating the book. Secondly, the process of translation and global uptake. And finally, the next steps and ongoing needs to develop storytelling as a tool with which we can package care and solidarity. So listening to the world, or needs assessment. The word needs assessment is bandied around quite liberally in the humanitarian sector, I'm sorry to say, but I am proud to say that we received the help of thousands of children, parents and teachers from all over the world before we started creating My Hero Is You. 2 surveys were developed for parents and caregivers to fill in. They were translated into Arabic, French, Italian, Portuguese and Spanish, and disseminated through various social media channels, UNICEF and WHO country offices. The International Red Cross and Red Crescent network of approximately 60 humanitarian organisations, and personal emails sent to friends and colleagues with children. The surveys were released for 48 hours. Responses were then collected, sorted, cleaned, translated into English, and then analysed by a small team from WHO and the International Federation of the Red Cross, using qualitative methods such as thematic coding. After an intense first Skype call with our working group, and it was intense, we knew certain themes were needed in our story: clear information on hand washing and social distancing, a sense of agency, and a way to help children cope with some of the realities of the pandemic, such as missing friends, staying home and losing relatives. I thought of my dearest friend and partner in Katabna, Asya, who had lost her dad. He had travelled with her through war all the way from Aleppo in Syria to their new life in Hamburg, and had always won my respect for being the best person I know. My own parents had been evacuated from a virus-struck town in Austria, and my dad had a persistent cough. I thought of my friends who had left the UK to go back to their countries, and those I cared about who were stranded here, far from their loved ones. And frankly, I felt overwhelmed. I remembered a psychologist who taught me how to accept the kind of change that makes one feel shipwrecked in one's own life. I thought of another who taught me a technique called Safe Place, which I think Camilla might mention in her discussion of the Better Learning programme too. I recalled what a gift it had been, like Mary Oliver's poems, to find in my own mind a place of security. In that safe place of my mind, I found peaceful landscapes. I found my loved ones, my best friend, my own best self, with all their warm words. Considering my brief, I wondered how to share that technique with as many people as possible. I had everything I needed: my words, my paints, a platform, the best psychologists in the world, the global networks of the UN and the internet. I had never felt better equipped or more lucky. It was clear to me then too that my own hero, sorry, so you can't all see this cat, there's a cat calling in. It was clear to me then too that my hero Sarah needed her own way to tell every child in the world that they could be their own hero and share their own stories with each other. And so Ario, the magical dragon friend, was the enabling voice for Sarah when he asked her what she needed in her moment of fear. So asking someone what they need in a moment of distress is sometimes the simplest, kindest way of connecting with them in their discomfort. It gives them power and the chance to voice their own solutions. Ario tells Sarah, "I come from your heart," and asks her what she needs to accomplish her dream of telling every child in the world how to protect themselves and others from COVID-19. As Sarah tours the world with Ario, from refugee camps to country homes, pyramids to mountains, children exchange strategies with each other, from washing hands and keeping apart to tips on how to keep in touch with loved ones, coping with stress and finding that safe place in their own minds. They also talk about the importance of friendship and valuing each other's contributions, which I hope is what we're all doing here today as well at this gathering. So the process of translation, when the book was released on the 9th of April as a free downloadable ebook on the IAC website, it soon became clear that the story resonated across the world. Not only did the translation of the book become an imperative for the WHO and UNICEF country offices worldwide, it became a beckoning call for the distribution of and cultural adaptations of our story in minority languages, from Kurmanji to Quechua to Cornish. Storytelling as a way of sharing vital information became political as requests for oral languages and oppressed languages arrived at our desks. Our process was to form a translation coordination team and offer design support to translators across the world who wanted to read the book in their language. There were no limits. The process took on a new life when animations, Braille version, sign language version, and read aloud YouTube productions in multiple languages reached us. This is, I believe, the ultimate nature of a story, to take on a life of its own, and perhaps the nature of transmission too. And it's the benefits of a Creative Commons license, as we heard before. Our team at the IAC created My Hero Is You, but it was the uptake from people all over the world that gave it wings. We're now working on a subsequent Caregiver's Guide, Action for Heroes, which should be released over the summer. So storytelling as survival and solidarity. The power of literature is something we're all talking about here today, right? What we package with words and images speaks to an ancient tradition of transmitting information in order to survive and to grow. I therefore draw towards a conclusion with the gratitude I received from one Italian mother who said, "Together with other mums, we have been telling our children that at the moment, the only contagion allowed is solidarity. Solidarity with our loved ones and with everyone else in this country means stay at home to protect others. This tale is the perfect way to express and animate this concept." So contagion for me is a word that speaks to this time in which the world is grappling with unprecedented challenges, not least of all the vast inequalities that determine which resources people have access to based on their race, class, and gender. Professor Hannah Song, a psychologist at the University of Seoul in South Korea, wrote to me to express her thoughts, saying, "This story might touch people's hearts, regardless of race, culture, country, and generation. A brave little black girl is a main character who helped other children keep themselves safe, and there are many child characters with diverse ethnic backgrounds in the story. Children became friends with each other through imaginary journey. Because racial justice has become an issue worldwide, I think that the story itself could be meaningful to all children in the world." So I leave you all with this thought for today. This problematic world offers itself to our imaginations, calling to us like the wild geese we heard about in Mary Oliver's poem. Sometimes harsh and sometimes exciting. It calls us to be creative, intersectional, and brave. We can always connect with each other with our words, no matter what divides us or frightens us. And I think therein lies that very primal solidarity found in writing and in reading, the desire to connect with another person in this life, to call, to respond, to love, and to gather. So I look forward to your calls so we can connect and think about the future collaboratively. And I think that's where I stop sharing my screen.